Share screen. Can you all see this okay? Yes? Okay. So, the All Campus Judicial Council. This is our spring selections information session. Welcome. Outlines, this is just kind of the structure of the presentation. We're going to go through the structure of ACJC, the selection process, which all of you, we hope, are interested in because you are here. Our student role with conduct, our role with the Board of Academic Honesty is what that stands for. Our student representation on committees, our role in student government, so the student association, and then student outreach and advocacy that we just do on the side, I guess. All right, so structure and composition, we are the judicial branch of the Student Association government. We are made up of 11 undergraduate students. There's 9 associate justices, which some of us kind of already introduced ourselves. We have 1 deputy chief justice, who's Ife, and 1 chief justice, Connor. This is all of us. So those who didn't come today, you can see who else is on the council, but we're a small group. There's only 11 of us, pretty tight knit. So the selections process, I'm not sure if all of you have done this yet. The first step would be to apply via our online application by Sunday by 5 p.m. The link is at the end of this presentation, but it's also on all the social media links as well. Step 2, if chosen, if you move on from the first application process, you are going to interview with the entire council. Our Chief Justice O'Connor will reach out to you by Tuesday, March 16th of next week to schedule that interview. Step 3, if chosen again, you're going to interview again. So there's 2 interviews with our Chief Justice and Deputy Chief, and then you're going to have 2 more ACJC reps most likely, and then other student association reps. We're not quite sure, I think, who the student association reps will be, but they're usually high ranking in the executive branch or the legislative branch. After all of that, if you're selected for the council, you'll be confirmed by the Senate, kind of a checks and balances that we are confirmed by the legislative branch. And then you serve on ACJC with good behavior, obviously, until you graduate. You do not need to be reconfirmed every year. All right, for Center for Student Conflict Management, this is one of the roles that ACJC does. We serve on student conduct appeals. So students that are found responsible as part of the conduct process or because of the COVID-19 process, COVID commitment, may ask for a different sanction than what they were given. This might be for these reasons is what our policy says. The reason was not appropriate, new information came up, this information, new information is sufficient to alter the decision, or an error occurred via the process. Justices, what we do is we review the case files, then we meet as a collective of who's serving on that appeal. We write an appeal letter, decide on a sanction if we agree with the appeal or don't agree with the appeal, and then once we approve that letter, it's sent to a student. As conduct advisors, we work with student conflict management again, and we serve as advisors for students who just need help learning more about the conduct process. So we're not necessarily their lawyers or people that are trying to fight for them, but we're just advising them on the process and answering questions, reading their letter if that's what they want, and just kind of being there as another student person. All right. This is a fun little chart that Associate Justice Smith made. Sam, would you like to talk about it?
Sure, I can talk about it. This is kind of just the life cycle of a conduct case. So we start with the red over on the left. An incident occurs. It can be reported through a variety of ways. Often we see the COVID concern report, common one recently. Then there's a meeting with the conduct officer. That's where a conduct officer sits down with the student, asks them some questions about what happened, their thoughts on it, all that. And then there are a few outcomes of that. There's the responsible option, where the conduct officer and the student agree on a sanction and a decision is reached. That can be appealed. That's often where we come in. We'll sit on that appeal hearing, like Alyssa said, and make a decision. Other outcomes, no misconduct might be found by the conduct officer and the process ends. Or if they disagree on what the sanction should be, there's a hearing either by an administrative board or an ACJC conduct hearing. We haven't had one of those in quite a while, but it is possible.
Alrighty. Board of Academic Honesty. So this is another main part of our role as an Associate Justice. serve as student reps on the Board of Academic Honesty, or BAH. Each hearing for academic honesty consists of 2 student reps and 2 professors. For hearings, what our jobs as ACJC reps are: we review the case file beforehand, we participate in and ask questions of the student during the hearing. The hearings have been on Zoom for almost a year now with COVID, but they were before in person. We rule whether the student is responsible of the academic honesty finding or not responsible, basically exonerated. Decide on the sanction along with the hearing board, so the other professors as well, and then approve a letter to be sent to the student. All of this process is kind of about a week for a student, sometimes a little longer, sometimes a little shorter, depending on the severity of the case. So these are lovely posters that were made years ago that are around campus. If you see them, this was part of the Academic Honesty Awareness Project. A lot of them just kind of have tips about exam success, and the next slide has research papers and group projects. We do a lot of advocating for students and try to help them during these hearings of learning about academic honesty and the policy, making sure they understand how not to cheat again, or just how a better way to conduct yourself in classes is. So yeah. We also serve on student committees. How many you serve on and how much you serve on a committee is kind of up to you. So here's just a few of them, but there's many more. So AHEC, that's the one I serve on. That's Academic Honesty Educational Committee. That is with Greer Murphy, who's the Academic Honesty Liaison. She's awesome. We have the Title IX Committee, which I believe Lucy, or Associate Justice Lucy, serves on. We have SCAPE, which is Standing Committee for Alcohol and something. Anna, say it again.
Standing Committee on Alcohol Policy and Education.
Thank you. Okay, so there's also that one. I think Anna served on it at once. I think Elle served on it at one time too, maybe Connor as well. So that's another one. We also have dining committees, which I think Elle served on. So there's just a lot of ways to be involved with committees. I think it's also important to say that some years we have more committees, whether that be like a COVID-19 committee, then some years we might not have a COVID-19 committee. So they kind of fluctuate as what the student body and what admin wants of us. All right, our student association government role. I'm actually going to allow either chief or deputy chief to talk about this because it's more their wheelhouse. So which one of you wants to talk?
Up to you, Aoife.
You just seem so ready. I'm going to let you have it.
Alrighty, let's do this. So our biggest role in the Students Association is that we're their judicial branch. So what does that mean in practice, right? So the government itself is quite small relative to the rest of the student body. There's 6,000 roughly students. The organization itself is, I think, roughly between 50 and 60. So what could possibly happen? Well, like anything that has a constitution, there's, and certainly branches, there's friction between the branches. There's governing documents that sort of constrain what can happen and outline procedures for what happens. And that sort of procedural fairness is really important. And so if a student believes that something is not going correctly, then they can file a constitutional appeal. And so our job is to listen to them, decide whether or not something is out of line, and then to offer a constructive way out of it. Related to that, that's not just for student government itself, that's also for student organizations. So every student organization is governed by a constitution, and they're supposed to follow the rules involved in it. Most of the time when that happens, it has to do with things like elections. So if you're particularly interested in some of the write-ups we've done about that, there is, I believe, a landmark cases folder available on the SA website. That's sa.rochester.edu. And so you can learn more about it there.
Did you want to talk about the other things or no?
I mean, that's our sort of biggest role. Thank you for the reminder on that one. So besides that, Aoife as deputy and I as chief often have a much bigger role in the Students Association than the council itself does. SA leadership is a unit, so that's folks like president, vice president, speaker of the Senate, and so on and so forth. And so we meet pretty regularly to talk about sort of cross-branch issues. That's become important, particularly this year as we deal with the intersection of conduct and COVID and public health measures. Additionally, we sit on steering, and so that has to do with sort of just procedural fairness when it comes to what motions get put on the Senate floor. And so that gets very in the weeds, but that's the committee that governs what can be put on the agenda for the Senate to talk about.
Awesome. Okay. So questions, I'm actually, for the sake of the presentation, I'm going to go to this slide and then we'll move back to questions. So if you want to contact us, there's the Chief Justice email. It's going to go right to Connor, and Connor will answer all of your wonderful questions if you think of something after this meeting. We also have all these links. Like I said, the application closes Sunday, March 14th at 5 p.m. So make sure to get it in before then. We have the QR code to our application, our Instagram and Facebook. All the lovely things of ACJC. And these are just my citations because I wouldn't be an ACJC rep if I didn't cite my sources. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing and stop the recording, and then we can talk about questions if there are any.